Hey there, Sean and Drake back again, and we're here for another segment on the Chinese weapons. And this time we're going to talk about some of the short specialty weapons and some of what they call the hidden weapons. It's another class of Chinese weapons. All right, get together, step out, present, back and down. Great. So in our previous videos, we talked about the Chinese long weapons and short weapons, and we concentrated on the traditional military weapons that influenced a lot of the systems of Kung Fu. So now we're going to talk about the specialty weapons that, that are used in a lot of styles. And we're going to go through several of them just kind of at a high level. We'll have more videos on these later for each individual weapon. But I want to give you an introduction and also talk a little bit more about how to train safely with the weapons. So of course, as you've seen our other videos, we say, you know, safety is important, it's your responsibility. And I want to give you a few points on doing that. All right, so we're going to start with kind of the staff related area. You know, one of the ones that is a martial arts weapon is the cane. And so the cane, of course, being related to the staff, but having the benefit of the hook. So we have a whole curriculum around the cane techniques. And some styles like Shaolin have a whole form based on that. In fact, their cane is really closer to what we would call a type of crutch, and may be the origin of what eventually became the much shorter tanfa in the Okinawan martial arts. But etymology aside, the cane is one of the few weapons that you could actually carry, because it's not a weapon, it's actually an aid, it's a walking aid, but it's a long, thin stick or piece of metal or carbon fiber or whatever it's made out of. So it can be used to defend yourself if needed. All right. Now, like that, the short sticks, these are ironwood sticks right here. It can be used singly or can be used in a pair. And these are not really military weapons, but they can be used for self-defense. And there are some arts that specialize in these. The Filipino arts, for example, specialize in these. But they're found in the Chinese martial arts too. They use the same principles as the swords and the stick weapons. Interesting stick weapon that is purely a martial arts weapon. It's not a military weapon. It's the 3-section staff. And it's in the category of what they call flexible weapons with the chain whip and the Meteor Hammer. They're quite difficult to use, and you have to be very careful because it's very easy to hurt yourself. And so what are they related to? They're related to the military flails. And so the 3-section sanjie, they have a 2-section lianjie staff, which is a long shaft, like a staff, and then a shorter end. It's like the military flails, which were used in the West, and they were effective at hitting like armored people with armored, that were armored. You hit them in the head, and the concussion would disorient them or knock them out, not necessarily kill them, but just take them out of fighting. Speaking of the flexible weapons, this is in the category of the hidden weapons. It's a chain whip. This is a heavy 9-section chain whip. And as you see, the tag's still on this one because I just have it to have it because
it's cool.
It's cool, exactly. And sometimes you have weapons to do that. So the one I actually practice with is this one. It's the same whip, but what I've done is I have padded the end of it because the end of it is a metal spike. And so I said in another video, you don't really want to be using the weapons to going to injure you. So in the old days, they just had a saying, don't smile when you use the chain whip, so you don't lose your teeth. But this is not the old days, so just pad this guy up. Or some people, they wear a motorcycle helmet. That's fine too, if you want to do that. And, you know, if you have a problem being seen with a padded weapon. Probably this day and age, you shouldn't be out in public with a weapon, period. Let's just say that. All right, so let's go. So we'll work our way over here. Maybe we'll start in the middle. So the art of Wing Chun has made the butterfly knives very famous. And so different styles have different lengths, is 14-inch length. So that's fine. It is basically a short sword with a D guard and hook, so it can be flipped. And they're used in pairs. These actually are derived from a military weapon. And the military weapon is this. This is one that I designed and had custom made. And this one is sharp. So again, remember I said never touch the blade of a weapon. You really need to know what you're doing. This one is sharp through here. So this I designed, and it's 18 inches, and so this was the length for the military version. So it's used in our Fujian crane system, which was a precursor. So it still retains the older military form of the weapon. So the long pole or the long spear in these were military weapons, and they became part of the Southern curriculum, and are pretty widespread, and they do qualify as one of my more favorite weapons. This is what is called a gun. Gun, so-called for, gun is the Chinese character for mountain, so this is mountain. And so this uses similar techniques, but in theory, less lethal because it's not a cutting edge. They just would, you know, crack your skull or break your bones and take you out. So it's used in the same art. So this is one I had custom designed and made for me. You might be familiar with the Okinawan sai. Sai is the Chinese for jai or hairpin, so it resembles the hairpin that ladies would put in the hair, just bigger and more dangerous, I suppose. But these are fairly light and small compared to the ones that would be used. So if you were facing someone armed with a sword or spear, you would want something longer and heavier, right? We had this discussion before. If you're fighting a guy with a spear, you want more reach or less reach?
More.
Right. And they're often used in pairs, one to deflect, the other to attack, for example, to kind of offset the length advantage, but it's an offset. It's not a replacement. So size does matter. Yeah, and so this, we talked before, you need to start with web. And so this, I show this, some Wing Chun schools actually use very short knives, and that's okay. This I got for him when he was a little boy because he saw me using these and he wanted to practice, so I got him these, and you know, no sharp edges or anything on that. So do you remember practicing with these?
I think so.
You think so? That's fun. All right, so these are crescent or Mandarin Duck or sun and moon knives, and for us, they're in our Bagua system. They're actually just another type of hidden weapon and could be much smaller. They were hidden in the sleeves of the long Chinese robes. So these are a little bit larger. These are for practice. These are wooden ones for practice, or if you want to practice with a person relatively safe. It's still a piece of wood, so you got to be careful. These, on the other hand, are actually made of tempered and blued steel. So they're not sharpened, but they could be. So they are close to a weapon. Be very careful practicing with these, especially since they have the points all over, it's very easy to, when you're doing the movements, to cut yourself with these weapons. So that's why don't practice with live blades. I've said that before. I'll say it again. You got it? Stand up straight. All right. Now, we get to the kukri. The kukri is not a weapon that is normally associated with the Chinese martial arts. However, it is a weapon that does exist in southern China, especially Yunnan province. So if you know your geography, it's closer to Tibet, Nepal, more in that direction. So more than likely, that's where it came from. But our kukri actually came from the Gurkhas in Nepal, and it's used in our Fujian system. So this is the classic sort of military World War II model kukri. Actual weapon, it is not sharpened, but the edge is there. So it's dangerous. You have to be, again, careful practicing that. There is specific technique. Never grip a kukri like this and draw it. Hold it like that, but the details of how to actually use this would be taught separately. This one is made by a company. It is sharp. It's made of tool steel and actually sharpened. So it's a nice weapon. I've used it for practice cutting. So if you're serious about your weapons practice, you're going to practice your basic techniques, you're going to practice your form. You're going to practice your application, you're going to practice your test cutting, and if you were to carry a weapon, you would have a carry weapon. So you would end up having different categories of weapon. The light weapon for training, learning the form. An actual weapon that's similar but blunt to your carry weapon that you would practice with most of the time. You would have your carry weapon, and then you would have another one specifically for cutting. And then finally you would have one which is more like, this is made to resemble the length of a knife, of a small knife, but it's padded. So it is for your two-person application training. This is a wooden weapon. If you're very careful with an experienced opponent, you're wearing eye protection, you can use this, but it's still almost always better to use a padded weapon. This was made by one of my students for me who did a nice dragon. It's a wooden kukri, so I like to practice with this quite a bit. It's a little bit too light, but it's fun. I have a good feeling because one of my students made it for me. This is a commercial practice weapon, and this is okay. It's made out of plastic. It's very safe. It's blunt, but it's not right because they decided to add a guard. They thought they were going to improve on the kukri design, and what that tells me is they don't know how to use a kukri. Maybe they have their own way. At least the way we learned, the kukri does not need a guard. Otherwise, it would have one. So the weapons have evolved to have what they have for a reason. So it could be that their method of usage, they needed a guard on the kukri. At the end of the day, it's whatever works for you, but in terms of like what we do, we're particular about the type of weapon that we're training with, because our mission is to preserve these arts. So if you just start doing anything that you want, it's okay, but you're not actually preserving the art. Now we get into the daggers. These are just training knives. Again, two edges. Chinese would call that a jin. I think they just call it bi, which is stabbing for a dagger. And then Dao, it's a small Dao. This is a single edge. It's based on a military fighting knife. It's just based on standard dagger. And the Chinese dagger, this is a ring knife. It could be thrown. So you have a whole category of thrown weapons. Most people think thrown weapons like a ninja star, but Chinese would throw sharpened coins. They had little nails or darts that they could throw, and of course they had daggers. They were hidden weapons. They could be thrown. This one, the ring knives, they can be flicked. It's kind of fun. Not a super martial weapon, but this one, because even though it's not sharp, it's actually made. It's made to the weight in a metal, like an actual dagger. I've put a protective plastic piece over the end so that if I'm practicing and make a mistake, I don't poke my eye out. I don't imagine that would be fun. And then another hidden weapon, you've probably seen these. Yeah, the fan, this is a cheap one. Here, it even has a Tai Chi symbol on it. Isn't that nice? Yeah, there we go, nice crack. So, fans are a real weapon because you know, it's just like now, it's gonna be a little bit weird if you go walk down the street carrying a spear and a saber. Same thing. So civilized people, they might need something to defend themselves against a miscreant. So they could use a fan, but they actually had fans that had metal spines in them. Or the bamboo spines at the end would be sharpened. Here. Yep. So, and this just scratched the surface, is to give you a little idea. There are, you know, if we've gone through a dozen or so weapons, there's probably 5 times this amount in the whole pantheon. You can imagine 5,000 years of martial arts, they've produced a lot. So you've got double hook swords, you have what they call wolf teeth club, which are clubs with spikes on the end, look like something out of a barbarian movie, and so on and so forth. Fujian or horsewhip, that's used by the Taoists quite a bit. So a lot of interesting weapons. Have any questions about these, fella, before we move on?
Mm-hmm. Why don't you have a guard on the kukri?
It actually does, properly designed, the kukri does have a small guard right here on the handle. So if we look at the military kukri, you can see that it's a little bit higher up. So you see here, this blade is not sharp, so even I wouldn't normally run my finger down like this, because one little mistake and you need a new finger, you need surgery. And of course, when this video is being shot now, it's not the time to go to the hospital. The reason is because of the way that the kukri is used. It's not used, you know, in a fencing way. So if they hook a sword, they're going to use the hooking action of the blade. So it means it would be caught in this area, okay? So the blade shouldn't come down to your hand, in other words. You know, so this kukri is sort of the shape, but it's not, you know, it's not quite the right design, but it's okay. This one, they just made no attempt. They just put this guard there because there's no curve of the blade to catch. So that's why. And so there's specific techniques that you have to learn with the kukri to be able to do that. So that's why. Good question. Yeah.
What's with the
notch here?
Yeah.
Okay, so this goes back. This represents the yang or creative principle, and so now we're getting into a kukri training session. We can do a separate video if y'all are interested. Drop a comment and let us know, and we can do more on this. But the idea, the Nepalese were either Hindu or Buddhist, and so they thought that when they used the kukri on someone, they were doing them a favor by helping them be reborn into their next life. I'm not saying you need to agree with that, I'm just relating it to you. And so that's what this represents. So it's a little bit backwards to what you might normally think, but that's their culture, so we respect that. And so that's what that represents. All right.
What's your favorite?
Oh, hard to say. It's so many. He's always asking my favorite. That's the single most common question I get. What's your favorite style? What's your favorite weapon? What's your favorite this? What's your favorite that? And I have to say, I like them all. Except, I mean, there's some stuff I don't like, but in terms of the weapons or the style, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't practice it. For a long time, it was of these short weapons. For a long time, it was the butterfly knives, and then I was in a kukri phase. And probably, if there's The Kukri is probably the only one of these, other than the little knives, that you could carry today under certain circumstances. Like if you were hiking, you'd probably carry a Kukri. It's very effective because it'll double as a hand axe too, which is also why it's an effective weapon. And the Gurkhas use them. Yeah, actually, so there was a story. There was a Gurkha. You can look this up. There's a Gurkha. Anyway, a Gurkha soldier in India recently, just a few years ago, and he was on a train, and he had just retired. But I guess a Gurkha soldier, even a retired one, is allowed to carry their Kukri, or he did, whether he's allowed to or not. But he was on the train, and at a stop in the middle of the night, something like a gang of 40 bandits got on the train. They were going to rob the people, and that was fine. I mean, it's not fine, but his idea was, well, okay, they're just robbing people, so he didn't do anything. But then one of the bandits saw one of the daughters of a family there and decided that they were going to gang rape her. And that's where he said, that's not going to happen on my watch. So he ended up, he went through the 40 bandits. He killed a few of them, wounded several of them, and many of the rest fled. And the police were later able to apprehend them. In fact, he was awarded some sort of commendation for that. So you'd like to say it's because of the Kukri, but it's not. It's because he's a Gurkha, and they're like probably the most elite infantry in the entire world. But there is something to the skill that they have with the weapons. So it's both the mindset, the training, but also the technique with the weapon. So just having a Kukri doesn't make you effective, but he would have been less effective if he had not had it, even with all of his skill. So anyway, how do we get on that subject? That's interesting. You can look that up. You can look up like Gurkha saves girl on train or something like that. It's an actual story. So good to hear about heroes like that from time to time. Anyway, yeah, anything else?
No.
Okay. Yeah, we'd be here all day, all night. I could talk to you. Anyway, so that's it. So what we're going to do is we are going to be coming out soon. We're going to start with the straight sword. So we're going to go through, and this is the first weapon that I started with. Not this exact one, but the straight sword. And so we're going to teach you all of the basic movements with the straight sword. And then you're going to be able to take that and learn any of the forms that are involved. And we'll teach you the applications. And then once you get one weapon down, you don't need to master it, you just need to get the basics of it down. And any other weapon that you learn is just going to be so much easier because the same principles will apply. You will just need to learn the technical differences between the weapons. So the biggest technical differences between the short weapon and the long weapon, and some of the double weapons that are used in pairs, and of course the flexible weapons are their own thing. But we're going to start with this. So if you're interested in learning the straight sword, let us know. Should be some place around here to get on the list for that. And we'll walk you step by step through it so that you too can enjoy practicing it. All right, so we'll see you soon. And so, salute with a weapon, step out, and down. All right, good job, buddy.